Codependency is any relational dynamic that where we source safety from something or someone at the expense of ourselves, our needs, our sense of self, and our overall well-being.
Straight from LAX to the podcast studio, we got Mark Groves here, one of my good friends. What kind of car did you rent?
Oh, I think it's like a Ford Edge. They didn't have anything cool.
Not douchey this time.
You know what? What did I have last time that was... I think...
You had a BMW when we were in Oregon. It was like
that
giant couch.
Okay, that's because they upgraded it and they didn't have the other car. But they gave me a BMW 7 Series. I was driving it and my friend Chad went in the back seat because he's like, this is like the kind of car that you have a driver. And I was like, I'm not your fucking Uber.
Mark loves cars.
I do, that's true.
I think cars, some of them, I think the luxury cars are douchey.
Which ones? Because I don't disagree with you. Like, I would never buy one of those.
I think a red convertible Mercedes is douchey.
What year?
The one that you had.
A 1988 560 SL? That's not douchey. That's a sweet car. That's a classic body style made from 73, I believe. That's unbelievable. Let me apologize on her behalf. That's disrespectful.
That's a midlife crisis collector car.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, it is the ultimate pun, right, on that. It's like 40-year-old buys red convertible, existential crisis. Well, it depends when I live till. It might not have been past midlife. Now, though, I'm closer to 90 than I am not. So I'm like, all right, I'm at 45 now.
Damn.
What are you, 41?
41, turning 42 next month.
40s, man. I like the 40s.
It was an adjustment. I'm good now. I'm coming out of my crisis.
You didn't get a red convertible, though. What does a woman do in her 40s? Does she get Botox?
If she's single, she would date younger men, probably.
Trying to hold on to the youth.
That becomes a thing. I'm learning my relationship with beauty and what I want to do and don't want to do. I have gotten Botox maybe 5 times and I realized it's not something I want to do.
Yeah.
I don't think it's good for you
I don't either.
Stop your brain from telling your body to do something. I don't think that cannot be good for you. But there's other things like microneedling. It's a little more natural, that where your skin just kind of regenerates itself, so that I feel more okay with. And I just want to look like refreshed and awake.
You're Asian, though. You don't age.
Until I turn 75.
There is
and
a
then
turnover.
It goes,
yeah. But at 75, you're not putting out the vibe. I mean, maybe you are. People in old folks' homes bang a lot.
Yes.
Like they get syphilis outbreaks and shit. And no one thinks about it. But there's people really smashing in there.
I'm happy for them.
Me too.
Might as well.
Like when people are like, oh my God, that's weird. I'm like, they're just you, but older.
Exactly.
Like it's not any different.
Exactly.
And they deserve to get some. You might just need a little more lube. But
for sure.
Yeah. I think I remember reading the book Stealing Fire, and they were talking about how the way that we experience empathy is we actually mimic the facial expression of the person. And so if like you're experiencing grief and then I'm now going to mimic grief in my experience of what you're going through, when we have injections, we can't do that as well. So, if you think about it, that's going to decrease potentially because we actually experience the feeling from the mimicking.
Yes.
So if
you're too frozen.
Exactly.
I do. It has to impact your nervous system. How can it not?
Nothing's free, okay?
Yeah.
Listen, nothing's
I
free
agree.
as much as we want to pretend it is. And listen, this isn't judgment. If you want to get something done, there's no judgment. I think we should just know that there's a potential cost. And to pretend that there isn't, like we're trying to do with every conversation out there, is like, no, like just tell the truth. We're so afraid of the truth.
Yes. With the beauty stuff, I feel a responsibility to be transparent about it. Because I think it just looks stupid if you completely lie about it, especially if it's really obvious you've gotten something.
I mean, there's some pretty obvious.
Yeah. But it's also, young girls are on social media and a lot of them are starting to get the stuff at lip injections in their teens.
I think it's crazy. Like, first off, I think if you have an Instagram or something that's based on a fake ass, You should have to get a check mark if you got a real ass. Like it should have to be
You're
verified. I don't know how
actually
you verified.
authentic.
Yeah, like you had to
Real.
squat for it because you think of all the people who had to squat for it or were born with it, and then when they were younger they got shamed, and now they're back in the truck up.
Right.
You know. But here's what I think about the overdoing of it is that just based on what I know, I don't know how you can. Now, there are going to be exceptions to what I'm saying. So if trigger warning on that, even though trigger warnings don't work, but that's another conversation. It's like when you inject something in your face, you're saying, I don't like my face as it is.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Now, that means that on some level, there is trying to resolve some sort of self-worth stuff. Now, again, there's going to be exceptions, birth deformities, maybe something that just has always held you back. I had a friend who had like a crease across her head when we were in her early 20s. And when she finally got Botox, it was like a change for life. Cool. But lip injections, I find to be this different animal. I think all of them have they're obviously everything in excess. And you are putting something that's called Botox in your head. But from another level, lips swollen, and all plastic surgery really is about appealing to evolutionary drives for attraction. And for women, that's generally expressing signs of youth and vitality and like shiny hair due to eating a rich diet in fat. Lips are bigger because they're aroused. And I was like, this is kind of wild because a lot of people are walking around like they're aroused all the time. And when the lip, and again, not a judgment, but I think when lips look like they're holding on for dear life, it's not attractive. And I feel like we're all kind of like, first off, I'm a male, so I'm like part of what has created this. I certainly fucking didn't, but I recognize that men have created this from expectations and all that. But I would say 99.9999% of the men I know, not attracted to that.
Yeah.
And I think women are being presented with this idea that it's actually going to improve their mate value and their desirability. But I actually think, especially done in excess, it is a red flag.
Yeah, I mean, everyone's different. I think if you're genuinely happy doing you, of course you do.
Right.
I'm a very do
Yeah.
you person. I value health. So if it's at a point where it's not healthy, that's where I start to think about it. But I know you're similar to my husband, Pete. You like a more natural look too. Like you don't even like
Love
when
it.
Kylie wears makeup.
No.
Yeah, Pete hates. There's a term
She does?
for that.
I'm like, no.
There's a term of like people who are scared of makeup.
Oh, really?
Did you know that?
Something phobia.
So yeah, malacophobia or something.
Oh, really? I have it. I have it. I find her Kylie naturally, you naturally. It's like you don't need it. But I understand that when there's photo shoots and video stuff, I'm like, listen, everybody do you. I'm just saying that from a mate desirability perspective, and again, I recognize this is a subjective lens, but the lip stuff is getting out of hand.
It's extreme. I think it could be a little dysmorphia too.
For
like
sure.
that's the
You
average.
can't not know your lips look. You have to not know your lips look like they're going to fall off.
Yeah. Well, it's a trend too. That's what I think because
It's a
growing
weird
up.
trend.
Yeah, because growing up we had trends like a lipstick shade or something, which you could just wipe off. These trends are plastic surgery.
There's other trends that are like
related.
changing your gender. Like,
Yeah,
that's
I mean,
wild.
Yes, we're not going to open that can of worms because we have to talk about your book, Liberated Love, written by Mark Rose and his lovely wife, Kylie McBeath. Clearly, she didn't want to take your name.
Nope. I
get
didn't
it.
even want her to.
I get it.
mattered to me.
I didn't want to take Pete's.
We combine them non-legally as McGroves.
Really?
Yeah.
Legally?
Yeah.
It's McGroves?
Non-legally.
Oh, non-legally. That's
Yeah,
cute.
Yeah, we just,
That's
like
cute.
our doormat says, the McGroves is. Feels good, you know?
That's cute.
But I want her to retain. I mean, it doesn't. Not that I had a choice, but I love that she retained her name.
I like that too.
Yeah.
So this book is about release codependent patterns and create the love you desire. And on the way here, I actually thought of a game. You want to turn this conversation into a game? I'm going to bet you something.
Sure. I don't think I have a choice.
Okay. This is
Much
my
like
show.
my last name. Yeah. Much like Guy's last name, it feels like I'm voluntold.
Okay, because Mark said that he doesn't talk as much anymore, that he's much more mindful with his speaking now.
I mean, I was lying, but I have a podcast. Come on, my work is to speak.
I have a podcast too.
Yeah, you're a woman of more words now.
Isn't that funny? I don't like talking and I have a podcast.
Yeah, right.
Thanks for tuning into my podcast. I want to take a minute to talk about my favorite instant coffee company, Strong Coffee Company. There's a bunch of healthy ingredients inside like collagen, MCT oil, L-theanine, and neurofactor. So that means extreme focus, no crash, no jitters, and it's also instant. You just add water, so it's really, really quick. They have a few different flavors, but my personal favorite is this one. It is the cacao. The other ones are hazelnut, vanilla, and they have just regular like black drip coffee. If you're interested in giving them a try, use code Christine Chang at checkout for 15% off.
Okay, so we're going to play a game if you want. I thought of 3 words that you can't say during the next 45 minutes that we're talking. If you say them, then you lose. If you say one of them, then I win. It's just 3 words.
What are your words? Do we both have it? So
Do we both have it?
Like we both have the same
We can
words.
both have it because I never say these words.
Oh, well, that's not fair. Okay, what are they?
Container,
Okay.
sacred,
I mean, they are words from the book.
honoring.
Okay. They're all from the book, but I can say other words.
You can say other words, just container,
container, and
sacred, honoring. You use those words a lot, even before you wrote this book. Every time
Well,
on Instagram, I'm like, container? What's
But
all this
those
talk about
are-
containers?
Those, to be fair, the Instagram clips are usually clips from a podcast talking about my book. So it's a little bit biased. You know, it's not like I sit at home and I'm like, container, 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 sacred, sacred, honor, honor. Okay, let's do it.
You use the words.
They're
a lot.
good words. Everyone should be bringing back, restore what's sacred.
Starting from now, if you lose,
I'll
Okay.
buy dinner.
you'll be okay. Dinner, then it's on dinner. I was just okay.
Okay, sacred, container, and honor. Okay, I'm going to
Honoring.
have to think about that. All right.
All right. Now, let's break it down for those people who might not know. What is codependency?
So codependency would be traditionally known from the areas of addiction. So, and really made more popularized as a term by Melody Beattie, who wrote the book Codependent No More, which was based on Al-Anon, which is a program that people go to who are in relationship or have a family member or something in addiction, in recovery. So that we would think of it like people who are enabling, right? We would say that's codependent, that someone who's in a relationship with someone and they keep compromising themselves. They're compromising their own needs, their own well-being. In our book, we define it as codependency is any relational dynamic that where we source safety from something or someone at the expense of ourselves, our needs, our sense of self, and our overall well-being. So really the key word in there is at the expense of. So when we're young, we learn that we need to be a certain type of person. We have to have certain types of behaviors to fit in our family, our culture, our religion, and which a lot of those are very synonymous. And so we develop strategies in order to be safe, to maintain safety and group membership. And if we grew up around someone who was an addict, a narcissist, angry, unpredictable, unavailable, then we often start to oscillate around that person and actually and we lose ourselves, even if we've never even developed a full self, in order to try, like, if they're good, I'm good. If they're safe, I'm safe. Mm-hmm. You know, if they're happy, I'm happy. And so that vigilance, that hypervigilance follows us into adulthood, into our relationship patterns. And codependency it's incredibly common. You know, I think anyone listening is probably like, wait, sometimes I compromise myself. If you have resentment, that's a good sign that you're codependent, because resentment is 100% of the time because you're prioritizing something or someone ahead of yourself.
What's the opposite of codependency? Is there a term?
So we often think that the opposite of codependency is overt individualization, like individuation. But really what healthy relating is interdependency. So it's not about getting rid of all your needs, right? That's usually where we swing to when we're thought of as like, we're too loud, we're too much, we're too needy. Maybe people told us that. We think we'll become needless. I won't want anything. I'll be quiet. Mm-hmm. But the real balance is having needs, having values, having wants, but being in a relationship with someone who honors yours, honors themselves, and you do the same. And that the relationship itself is using the things that are coming up to heal, to like become more powerful, like think of like traditional pickup artistry or like Cosmo articles. It's like 8 ways to do this, send a text that makes them send one back, and these are all these ideas of games. They're like, there's idea of like, how do I get the upper hand, or you're whipped, right? These are all this implying that there's power in a relationship. And if you don't have it, you're not safe. And you need to have it because power will create desirability. However, that right there, you're already losing if you're thinking about how to get the upper hand or anything like that. Because when my wife becomes more outspoken, stands more in what she desires, she becomes more powerful. If I wasn't comfortable with that, mm-hmm. It's because I'm afraid. I'm afraid that she might leave me. I'm afraid that she might get noticed for that. I'm afraid that she might tell me something I don't want to hear. And where relationship structures have really been based around men not getting feedback, around the male needs, which of course this is always going to be true. But really what we want to try to co-create with our partner is that when she becomes more powerful, the relationship becomes more powerful, and I do too. And power more being not about domination, which is what we think of it. Power being about taking up space, leading, community, family, being a great parent, right? Like in a state of knowing, where you're like, I'm not going to apologize for who I am. And my wife is so good at giving me reflections. Like a month ago, she was like, hey, I notice you're hiding. Like, I notice you're avoiding, like really stepping into what you want to step into. And I was like, what? But just being like, thank you. Because I notice it too. And I need to be called forward on that. And that's the beauty of having a woman as a partner. Someone who I'm like, you see shit. Yeah, she gave birth to our child. It was wild. It was incredible. When I saw her do that, I was like, you could do anything. Yeah.
Okay. What, because your book's titled Liberated Love. When I hear that, I hear freedom.
Yeah.
Is that a big part of it?
Yeah, my mom thought it meant polyamory. She was like, I'm not sure that title makes me think about polyamory. Is that what you're talking about in there? Well, I'm not polyamorous, so no. But I'm like, I guess I can see where you're getting that. Even though the subtitle is Release Codependent Patterns, not Release Monogamy. Yeah, so Liberated Love, the principles in it that we talk about, like one of them is about your partner having a path that is their own. So we're honoring each other's path. So much of our relationships are really based upon like this idea of commitments, right? Vows. And these vows being like, think of the ones we don't usually, now at least we come up with some of our own. Mm-hmm. Before we were like, honor and obey. That didn't work out well. You would have screwed that one up. Till death do us part. All these infer some sort of no choice but to stay. Mm-hmm. And to honor and obey, no choice. So when we talk about honoring each other's path as our own.
Sorry, you said honoring.
Honoring. That's not honor.
I said honoring.
No, you said honor.
No, I said honoring.
Wait, it's a principle from the Bible.
Okay,
Okay,
I'm sorry.
I screwed it up.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. Please finish.
Okay, well,
Dinner.
one check and fuck that up. Yeah. Now I can go ham. Sacred. Container. But honoring each other's path as our own. And what that really is about is that can the relationship be a place that is saying what you dream about matters, what you desire to create with your life matters, what you want matters, and what I want matters. Can we use two people are better than one? We know this. Walking side by side, better in battle, better in everything, better at problem solving, better at even resolving conflict and coming up with better ideas. Better ideas are always born from two ideas. So this is this idea that how do we use this to bring you fully alive? Like, I think about it, how wild it is. We leave relationships and then we do everything we wanted.
Yeah.
It's like, why the hell are we not doing that together? And, a lot of people then ask, like, well, how do I know the difference between compromising for the relationship, because that's a necessary part of partnership, and self-abandoning? I'm like, well, look, we might know this traditionally. Let's say my wife wanted to do a master's degree in something, and she's like, we got to move to Michigan. I've never been to Michigan, but it's not high on my list. But if it was really important to her and I had to give up something for that, but I also know that in service of our relationship, her expression, we could come back to, or there's some way I can still meet my needs somehow, that it's just brought up what I'm giving up, but what I'm giving up is actually in service of us. That's expansive. It feels better. It feels expansive. Self-abandonment doesn't feel expansive. It feels like you're losing. It feels like you'll start to feel resentment. And a lot of us don't even know that we're self-abandoning. We don't know that we're not expressing what we truly want. One of the other principles is having mutual positive regard. Like that there's just a positive regard and respect and reverence for one another as they are, as a being, as a sovereign being. And I think so much of what, we witness in relationship is that we don't start and create relationships from that place that are really about this, like, even in the way we communicate, and that we handle conflict. Is there mutual positive regard? And one of the other principles, there's more though, but this one, I think the most important, is a fierce commitment to telling the truth. And I know you live that, and you and Pete live that. And it's the most liberating thing in the world. Like, being in a relationship with you is easy because you're not ever placating. You're not passive. You're just direct. And you tell me what you need, and you tell me what you're upset about, and you tell me what you want. And you're very direct. Everybody needs to have that tiger mom in them, Your mom might appreciate that. She's very direct.
I think it just makes life easier. I'm all for ease. I don't like
telling the truth is way easier.
Yeah, I don't like guessing. I'm like, what is going on here? It annoys me a lot. Waste my time.
Yeah, it's triggering for you. Yeah, it is. Most of us learn in childhood to dance around the truth. We learn to, even our personalities, our survival strategies are actually about not confronting things. Everyone in a family system, a human system, starts to develop adaptive strategies around the alcoholic dad or around the lying, cheating mom, right? Everyone is trying to figure out how to not talk about the elephant in the room. And then, of course, that leads us to be adults that don't know how to talk about the elephant in the room. And so, I think about often how the black sheep of the family is the one who generally is trying to point to the thing that no one wants to look at. And that's why they're often ostracized, because they're trying to shift the family system. But everyone is so afraid of the system falling apart that they turn against the person who's trying to disrupt it, usually, till the system does fall apart because the truth has been revealed. And, ideally there's healing, but there isn't always. Either way, the black sheep gets to make their way to, I said eventually the black sheep finds a herd, and my friend is in farming. And she was like, it's not a herd, it's a flock. And I'm like, well, okay, well, sorry.
It's a flock of sheep.
Yeah, and I was like, well, thank you for correcting me. That's an important detail.
I didn't know that.
I know, I thought herd, but when she said flock, I was like,
it sounds right.
Yeah,
too.
that sounds, I bet you're right. She was great. I loved that feedback. I was like, on a roll, and I'm like, yeah, and then the black sheep fly in the herd, just flock. Fuck.
I love good grammar, diction.
I don't.
Just speaking clearly and correctly.
We don't even know the word for it, but yeah, the irony. But what I love about it is that that is what the internet has really fostered, is this ability for people to move beyond their communities and see they're not broken. and see that the values that are trying to come through them and out of them that are in violation of the agreements of their church or their culture, that there's other people who are like, oh, we like telling the truth too. And communities that can hold truth can hold pain. I like to think of that a lot, of like when someone goes through something that is painful, traumatic, communities that can hold truth can talk about it. Because they're not, I think we try to save people from feelings we don't know the value of.
Mm.
So I know the value of a breakup, of grief, of suffering. When someone's going through a breakup, I'm not like, oh my God, let's go get wasted and go hook up with chicks. I'm like, no, you got to go deeper. Like, I'll be here, but don't waste this. Like, don't, Francis Weller says, don't waste a good divorce.
Mm.
So true.
That's true. Because the people who have, actually, I find most of the divorced people I meet have so much wisdom. I'll take their advice all day.
Yeah.
Most of them. But unless if they haven't healed when they're doing the same shit, that's different.
Yeah, like if a divorced person has been introspective, when someone says, I'd never date a divorced person, I'm like, well, I'd never date someone who wouldn't date a divorced person. So, because I find that my wife is divorced. It's one of my favorite things about her. Because that's what woke her up. That's what made her ask questions. And, instead, when we don't want to date divorced people, we're continuing this hierarchy of relational status. That if you're in a relationship, you're better than someone who's dating, than someone who's then engaged, then dating, then single, and divorced is on the bottom. And this is just because we're afraid of relationship endings. Culturally, we've said that if you go through a breakup or you get divorced, it really is a threat to a community. And so we still have these evolutionary needs to make sure that people's behavior stays within the lines. And if you look, a lot of religions have that. And of course, not all, but a lot of religions have, if you break this code and you get divorced, you will never talk to your family again. And so you see that a lot. Like, I have a good friend who's a Jehovah's Witness. He's been divorced twice. He hasn't talked to his parents since in like 18 years. He's had so much happen there. He's happily married now. He's living a beautiful life. And his parents haven't talked because he got divorced. That's wild to me.
Yeah. I think Scientology too, right?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I've watched that documentary on it, though. Shit is...
It's so interesting to me. But I think if
weird.
You leave, like Nicole Kidman and Tom Cruise, like the kids don't talk to her anymore. If you leave the church, you can't...
Did Tom leave or no, just Nicole?
No, he's still in there.
He is.
Mm-hmm.
That's that one that was based off the comic book, right? Like the guy who originally created Scientology
He was a director
wrote comic
or something.
books.
Or yeah.
And not like science fiction.
Yes.
And so the thing is based on the science fiction he wrote. Which, I don't know, like, are we going to say that the original biblical texts are maybe
That's
not
what
the
I was going to
same,
say. It
right?
is the same. It's newer, so it feels like, okay, some guy just wrote this, but I'm like, some guy just wrote, or woman, I don't know, wrote the other ones too.
Yeah, like, we never know the origin of any of these. Like, we know the supposed origin of
Someone
all of
wrote
these
it.
things. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm not a theologian, but I think there's something... Alan Watts has this quote where he said the greatest trick that the church ever learned was to become the broker between you and God. Like to charge you and to command you and to tell you what morality, what behavior they need from you. And if you do it, they'll usher a conversation to God. If you don't, you won't, and you'll go to hell. And I grew up Catholic, and that was very much the conversation. I remember thinking, like, if I do that, I go to hell. I'm like, what? That's what an awful thing for a kid to have to think. That no adult was like, it's kind of bullshit. Like, we do that too. Because they all fucking do it. The ones who are more strict about the shit are usually the ones hiding the most stuff.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Do you know how many Mormon ministers I've heard about? Bishops, I think they're bishops, have porn addictions or porn stuff came out. And I'm like, yeah, that's what repression does.
1,000%. I have another podcast with a comedian. Her name is Shining.
She's hilarious.
But she always talks about like how Catholic girls, her Catholic friends growing up, she's like, most slutty because, of course, the repression.
I feel like I read a stat on this. Don't verify me on it. We're no fact checker. But I believe I read that the pregnancy rate of daughters of bishops is higher than the per capita. I don't actually know how that stat could be created. So, you know what? I'm just going to postulate that that's probably true. But that when I was in university, I went to university with a lot of Mormons. And I found that they were either really promiscuous or not. And I was promiscuous, so this is not the pot calling the kettle black. I just wasn't a Mormon. But what I saw was, and then they would all of a sudden return to the church and get married. And I had a friend who went to BYU, and she said that for a bit, what they were doing, Brigham Young, which is in Utah, which is like a Mormon university, they would go to Vegas, which was very close, and they would get married, have sex, and then annulled that night or the next day.
Okay.
I was like, guys, that's like breaking the whole reason. Yeah, humans are wild. Like, we like to pretend that we're all moral, but there's so many hidden shadow behaviors. And really part of the book is about bringing the shadow forward. Is like, let's just tell the truth about everything. Because what feeds addiction? Dissonance. What feeds addiction? Not telling the truth. What feeds addiction? Not honoring yourself. What feeds addiction? Pain. Gabor Mate has a great question. The wrong question is why the addiction. The right question is why the pain. And so when we can start to get right with reality, which is a whole chapter in the book, is like just getting right with reality. Like, come to Jesus, come to whoever. But like, just start telling the truth about who you are, what you choose, the types of people you're in relationship with, what you tolerate, the way you show up that's unhealthy, toxic, etc.
I think that can be scary for a lot of people because just say you're in a relationship and then one person reads this book and gotta tell the truth. I think they might think like this could be the end of the relationship then.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
I mean, that's the truth. Like, look, your partner can leave you in any moment in any day. That's true. Trying to avoid that as true doesn't allow you to recognize the S word I was going to use. Choice.
You can use it now. You're paying for dinner.
Yeah. I already fucked it up. The sacred choice that is choosing to be with someone. So when we're in the book, we have the pause, the sacred pause. And that is really because the book is structured somewhat memoir on Kylie and I's experience as a couple. And for you listening or watching, if you're not familiar, we had a relationship. It was 4 years. We broke up. Relationship was done. 10 months apart, got back together. And that's Sacred Pause Relationship 2.0. In the book, we tell client stories and also give people exercises to walk through. Really, this idea of the sacred pause is about stopping what you do and starting to create new behaviors. The reason there's a pause that's necessary, Stan Tatkin's a very famous psychologist, and he talks about how the reason that relationships end is because couples fail to create clear agreements at the start and ongoing. How are we going to handle conflict? What are we creating from this relationship? What's the purpose of us being together? Like, all these types of things are so important. And so the container, so whether you're single, dating, in a relationship, the container is about creating this space to, like, the old relationship needs to end and a new one be born. The old self needs to end and a new version of me be born. When I'm working with a client and let's say we come up with the agreement that they're going to take 3 months to not date anybody, no sexting, no nothing, like no interacting with the gender they're attracted to. They're not, that's one of the rules that they're agreeing to. And I was working with this one woman and she's like, yeah, 3 months. And then she's like, I could do 1 month. And I was like, look, you're already negotiating with what you're capable of. Just because of that, you need to do 3 months. Because you're already saying, I can handle this. But really, there's nothing different than 3 months other than the scarce idea that you're getting older and you need to meet somebody. When someone says like, I don't have time, I've already been single for 5 years, like I'm getting older. And I'm like, you don't have time to not do it because I'm going to be having the same conversation with you in 2 years. Because what we source from these interactions, validation, everything, and especially relationally, these things cover up what is yet unhealed. Our interactions with social media, the addictions to these things, shopping, whatever it is, we're able to say heroin addiction, phone, fine, because it's normalized, right? And again, like I'm leaving social media because I recognize how unhealthy it is for me. Other people might be able to have a healthy relationship with it. I'm still unconvinced that that's actually true. I don't think it's designed to have a healthy relationship with, because one side of the relationship with the social media company, you have no impact on, you have no influence. You can't have a healthy relationship when there's no influence from the other side. Like I have a 1.1 million followers. I couldn't get someone on customer service if I tried.
But then you could influence your community. Like anyone who's following you can see your positive message.
That's true, but the only way they could see it is if I make sure that I'm doing everything that the social media platform desires of me. If I break rules, gone. If I don't dance and point at stuff, if I don't start to do 1.5 minutes instead of 10, there's all these different rules, because the way that the companies design the platforms is that they're about creating more engagement, right? Because more engagement means more ad dollars, because that's from more attention. Mm-hmm. So essentially, social media companies are structured to extract as much attention as possible. So they're going to only promote the content that extracts the most attention. And I wouldn't say that's necessarily one evil person's decision that they're like, oh my God, we're going to get everyone's attention. It's that it's a share-held company and the value of it needs to go up. And the only way to do that is to keep people on their phones more. But at some point, we're going to end up hitting a wall with that. And social media companies are not rewarded for looking at the impact of their product. They're not going to do that. We all know it's having a dramatic impact. Look at the anxiety and depression levels, especially of girls, of teenage girls. And that, although the subject is not, is one that's probably too inflammatory, that then goes to the conversation about gender, which we don't need to go into, but all these things are overlapping. And when we don't have control over, like if I don't have access to a no, right? If I can't say no to my phone, if I can't say no to an unavailable person, if I can't say no to a friends with benefits or a situationship that I don't, I feel like there is some element of misalignment where I'm compromising what I want, then when a yes shows up, it won't be an authentic yes, because I don't have access to a full no. So if I don't have access to a full no, my yes isn't real. It comes with small print. Like it's a yes, except under these circumstances. It's a no, except when someone might be upset with me, except when I'm afraid that I won't get to keep you. And, coming back to that, creating your own agreements about taking a break, what comes forward is that we've been trying to mask loneliness, that we have unresolved grief from our childhood, that maybe we have unresolved trauma that we haven't explored, that has been showing up, in a way by the choices we're making and the distractions we're choosing. And what gets replaced there is a sense of self-trust. And so it's like, by being able to keep your word and keep that agreement, you start to recognize that you have your own back. Like, oh, when desire comes forward, I choose. Oh, when someone misaligned is in front of me, I got me. Oh, when I need to express a need, I just lived my needs. I know exactly what those are. And Harville Hendricks and Helen Hunt, who are famous psychologists, researchers, teachers, they have a famous saying, which is, you're born in relationship, you're hurt in relationship, and you heal in relationship. And so even once we experience the single life and we think we got our poop in a group, we then got to bring ourselves back into relationship to experience our needs bumping up against someone else's. And we start to see the evidence of our lovability, but not just that, but the evidence that we have access to our voice and to advocate for ourselves. And none of this is complete without healing the nervous system. And part of that sacred pause actually is part of nervous system healing, because you're no longer relating to things and people in a way that dysregulates you. Dysregulation being like, they'll say you're in an aroused state or activated. That might be another word people use.
And that includes social media.
Social media feeds off activation.
Totally.
Like if
whenever
you were to
I need a dopamine hit, sometimes when P and I are fighting too, horrible habit, but sometimes I'm like, I just want to go to the bed and just scroll for a minute because it's easier. And I know that's horrible to do.
I agree.
We'll talk later. But I'm like, I just want to scroll on my phone.
And I got on
on the bus to the rental car place from the airport, and I looked, and everybody in the airport, in the bus, sorry, was on their phone. And, I was like, I get it. And then Kylie called me with our son. So, then I was. And I was just thinking, like, we often complain that we can't meet people, but we're just not seeing people. And I honestly think there's going to be an analog revolution.
I think so too.
Yeah.
I feel it.
I do too. I think, I want to say we probably have a subjective lens in that we're one of the last generations to know life before a smartphone even. So we actually know the experience we had in childhood, getting on your bike, going to an adventure, playing in the forest, whatever it is, right? And a lot of kids these days don't. They don't go outside and play.
Sad.
They play in a virtual world.
It's sad.
It really is. We think that young people are sluttier today, but they actually have less sex.
Right, because they're stimulated.
Yeah, they're watching porn. They're stimulated through being in these online worlds. They're afraid of intimacy and connection. Yeah. I really think we're also probably, which isn't great, but we're likely creating a lot more narcissists. One, because parents, the way that kids learn empathy is one through seeing their parents interacting with mother especially, but the other is watching people interact. So watching parents interact, they start to learn how emotion is communicated through facial expressions. And so when a parent is in their phone and not looking at the child or looking at the world, there is again not an ability to learn language through facial mimicry. And it really, a narcissist is someone who has a lack of empathy, no access to empathy, and probably has a pretty severe attachment trauma with their mother, so they're really hyper avoidantly attached. But look at what social media does. I mean, it celebrates the self.
Yeah, I can totally see that. I was thinking about how much happier I was pre-social media.
Yeah, I mean, doesn't that...
Were you happier?
Yeah, I look back now, having, for the last 4 years, really struggled with figuring out where does social media fit in my life and how do I have a business on it and maintain my mental health. In the podcast that I shared that I was deleting, I was saying that I've had 4 employees run my social media, and every single one has gotten to a place of pretty severe psychological strain. And it's not because we're getting like weird toxic messages. Like, that's pretty rare. I caused the odd debate in the comments, but not very common. Not compared to some people, right? And what I noticed is, because I experienced it first, and I just thought to myself, like, someone said to me, well, why don't you just pay someone to run your social media? Mm-hmm. I'm like, I already tried that. And that's like paying someone to date an abusive person for you. Like, I can't in good conscience be like, go take this grenade. It's going to really put you down. It's not going to be good for you. And yeah, I definitely have experienced anxiety, because I interviewed Stephen Porges 2 days ago, and Stephen Porges is the creator of polyvagal theory and the Polyvagal Institute, which is nervous system health. And he was saying, in society, so not just social media, in society, we're constantly being evaluated. Test scores, are you a good boy, a good girl, your dancing, your sports, your everything, right? Grades, university, all the different, did you go to university? Like, everything's an evaluation. Social media, not only are we being evaluated by the people consuming our social content, and, what's normal for a human to experience in a community, I believe the number is called Dunbar's number. And it's the maximum capacity for intimate connection that a human has. And I believe the number is something like 160 or 100. I'm sure someone will know, but it's somewhere around there. So if you have 180 followers or 350, you're already kind of beyond what your capacity is, right? Mm-hmm. If you got 1,000, 10,000, 20,000, you're constantly being surveyed by people. Your validation is coming from the amount of likes, the amount of whatever. And it's hard to separate that, but I think you can. Mm-hmm. But last, you're being evaluated by an algorithm. And when I was talking to him about this, he was saying, yeah, but the thing is in a relationship where you feel like it's not fair how much you're giving and how much they're taking, and that like YouTube at least compensates you for your content. I believe TikTok maybe does now. I don't know. I don't use it. Or let's say you're on LinkedIn, maybe you generate work from it. I don't know. I do get annoying DMs from frickin' cold callers. They're so annoying. So if you do that, stop it. But he said that there is no ability to actually tell them how you feel and how it's impacting you. And so because of that, the relationship itself it's going to burn your nervous system out from the constant the hyper evaluation state. And I was like, oh my God, that makes so much sense that people are anxious, tired, burnt out. Like creators are burnt out. I know so many creators who are burnt out. I told one of my friends I'm leaving, and she said, man, when I heard you were leaving, I felt like you got early release from prison. Like it was Shawshank and you were told you could go. And I was like, man, isn't that so telling? Like we've normalized that we should be totally extracted and exploited from by a company. And by companies, I mean, this is capitalism.
Yeah.
Which I see the value in capitalism. It's just when there's no corrective markers, it creates creativity. It creates a pressure on human ingenuity. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, if there's not like a lever, they'll just turn it up and keep taking. And like, I don't think anyone ever needed billions of dollars.
No.
No.
I believe.
Which I'm not shaming wealth.
No,
I think
I'm
money's
actually
great.
fiscally conservative, but I think that a cap makes sense. I mean, what does someone need $100 billion for? One person.
They just usually kind of look. I like the saying that money just amplifies who you really are, because I have no problem with wealth. I think everyone should get wealthy and
I like
listen.
money.
If you want to get out of the system and get a farm and grow your food, you ain't gonna do it at the bottom of the pyramid. Like that's how it works. And we moralize money. We're like, more money is bad, but we know poor people who are mean, and we know rich people who are mean. And I know poor people who are great, and I know rich people who are great. So it's not really about that. But, I guess unless you want to join the World Economic Forum and all the elite groups, which they do all hang out together. They hang out with Epstein and P. Diddy now.
Oh, God.
I know.
Whose house just got raided.
I just heard. I'm like, oh, my Lord.
Wait, because what happened with him? Did he
I think it was sex trafficking, wasn't it?
I mean, that doesn't surprise me. I know his ex-girlfriend came out and said that he was sexually abusive and would ask her to.
Yeah, the rapper, right? The singer.
I forgot. Cassie.
Yeah, that's right.
And then they settled it outside of court.
Oh, yeah. See, like that. There's actually a new. I don't think we should name him, but there's a new influencer podcaster who's a bunch of stuff has just come out that he's, because you never don't want to open a liability, but he who shall not be named. I was thinking about this because he had like 5 or 6 girlfriends, and look, if someone wants to have 5 or 6 girlfriends and they're transparent and open about it, cool. But it was very deceptive, the things he was doing. And my friend was asking me, why do you think, and what do you think about it? And I was saying, it's really interesting because the level of, like, he would text one, he'd be with one, he'd leave the one at his house and then went and had coffee with the other to talk about how their relationship was. And I'm like, man, the near misses that are happening must be so thrilling, right? But it shows that there's a complete lack of empathy for the impact these behaviors have on other people. And there's probably some sort of sourcing of power. And I think when people, but especially men, get into positions of power and they haven't actually explored their shadow and their insecurities, they start to exploit it. And, and they, especially if they're narcissistic. And our society tends to promote narcissists because, narcissists tend, and I'm talking about grandiose narcissism, not like vulnerable narcissism, covert narcissism. But they tend to be really charismatic. They tend to be really well-spoken. They tend to be, a lot of things that society likes. They tend to hold their power well. They tend to be successful in business, really good at sales, and I just look at what's come out, but I think for a lot of women, they've had experiences with men in power who tried to. I have friends who are like, I've never had a male mentor not try to hook up with me at some point. I'm like, that's so sad.
Yeah.
Like you're in these positions of trust. And I'm so happy that I didn't have this level of influence when I was immature and when I was wounded. You know, I'm happy that through my work actually is what continued to hold me accountable, just through my own integrity. I was like, if I'm going to start talking about these things, I need to live them. And so that just became a bar for me. But it's not a bar for everyone, and that's okay. Because, you know, I just hope that through this, he finds some introspection. I hope that through any time a man or a woman goes through some sort of experience where they have a lot of shame, and that shame is appropriate to the impact they've had on people, because there's a difference between toxic shame and healthy shame. Healthy shame is the consequence of violating your own morality, you know, as where violating a group's morality that's not your own is very different, and that's where toxic shame can come in. Yeah, wild. The news is, it's never ending.
I know. I love going down those rabbit holes, though. I know who you're talking about, and I read up about it. I'm like, what happened?
Yeah, and I see all these men saying, oh, it's his personal life, stay out of it. And, you know, I see what these women, at least my assumption is, that these women are trying to protect other women from being misled and hurt by him. But I see all these men saying, it's his personal life, don't bother with it, it's a hit piece. And I'm going, it's a hit piece, true. And what he did wasn't okay. And like men, we need to hold that type of behavior accountable.
1000%.
Like women have been trying to hold that kind of behavior accountable forever. But, you know, we need to say that's actually, it's not okay to treat people that way. If you want to be polyamorous and date lots of people, just get consent.
Yes.
That's all.
People need to know the impact of their actions. And I'll say you're one of the few coaches that I know that live in integrity. Because at the conference that I met you at, 15 years ago?
Yeah, 11, something like that.
I don't know.
Yeah.
There's a lot of great people on stage. And then
oh yeah,
I would see
remember.
at the after parties, and you know, some of these guys are married, hitting on women, hooking up with other women. I'm like, what the hell
After
is
talking about their wives and their love.
on? I'm like, why would I take your advice if you can't even, you know, follow through on your commitment to your wife? And I know this
I agree with
one
that.
would, you know, I'm like, where's the logic here? He's like, when I'm around my wife, like, she's my queen. She's my queen. But it's like when he's not around his wife, it's like she doesn't exist. And it's different if she knows, which I'm 99% sure she doesn't know what he's
Right.
doing. If she does, then, and you guys have that agreement, that's fine. But I'm like, no, this is not okay. And it's just weird based on what he was teaching about alignment. And I was
remember
like,
that.
you're not in alignment.
Well, to be able to disconnect from the impact you have on other people, you have to disconnect from empathy, right? So again, right, that's like this ability to, which I think is interesting, is to explore, because I think of the person who's going through this right now, to explore from a neurological perspective what parts of the brain and what lights up and what has to happen that we're completely disconnected, and we seek dopamine, but we disconnect from empathy, you know, at the same time. And, you know, I think about the other person you're speaking about, and there's a lot of people who speak on stage to give a message and then they're doing something else. I think we can feel that level of misalignment, you know, I think in the words, for the most part. But I'd say like often the messages that get popularized by misaligned teachers are messages that are just like pop culture-y, you know. They're like surface level conversations, which, you know, I'm not here to judge. It's like, I think of someone like Osho. I love so many of his words. And then I watched that freaking documentary where he went crazy.
Oh, I didn't know he went crazy.
Oh my God, he had a cult in Oregon.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
I mean, he was high on drugs and stuff after he got famous, and he was collecting Bentleys. It's a bag. I remember when I shared an Osho quote, people were like, oh my God, I can't believe you're sharing his words. And I'm like, relax. Like, oh my God, everyone is like so sensitive to everything.
Oh, online just sucks. I mean, you can't take any of that too seriously.
You can't, because people want to censor the world instead of direct their attention. Like, I'm responsible for your emotional reactivity.
Right. That makes me sad because I don't, as adults, well,
That's not an adult.
It just seems like there's a lot more of that than I would think that there would be.
Like in actual reality. Well, I think, people are, this is the conversation about censorship. It's like governments are now raising that message saying, we need to protect you from dis and misinformation. Let us take care of you. We don't want you to see speech that makes you upset. So there's a lot of speech laws going in around the Western world, which at least in the US, there's some, and again, I know everyone has different perspectives on this, but I really do think that free speech is like free speech. There's not qualifiers, because whoever makes the qualifiers is where the problems come in. I think love or hate Elon Musk, I like what he says about it, which is free speech is when someone you don't like can say something you don't like. And I'm like, yeah, there's a lot of things I don't like seeing and hearing, but that doesn't necessarily invalidate them, right? They might be true, I just don't like them. And as humans, we have so many blind spots, like so many, more than we would ever like to admit. And I think when we study history, we can see that a lot of humanity's most atrocious events are sold on the idea of for our good. And that's why we study history, so we don't repeat it. But I think we're going to look back at how social media has amplified division because of algorithms and the sensationalization, the amplification of like short form content amplifies.
For sure. It's naturally reductive. Exactly. If you only get a minute and you only have so many characters, you can't have...
And you want to go viral, right? Like you get rewarded
if it's more opinionated and with edges.
I did see that in a study on hooks, like the beginning of videos for you watching or listening. It's called a hook to get people to watch more. One, our attention span is just shit. And so when people are like, I have ADHD, I'm like, yeah, you mean you live in this world and we're just wanting to give everyone Adderall. And it's like, why don't you go hug a tree and get off your phone? There's a cure. And not minimizing if you really have it. But I think about like, what was I just saying?
I don't even remember.
Oh, yeah, the hook. Positive hooks work more than negative hooks. I didn't expect that. So
that's
like a positive, like here's a way to increase, or here's instead of like 4 ways that this destroys your life. Yeah, that doesn't work as well.
Okay, I thought it was the negative.
No, and wouldn't that be interesting? I bet you, because maybe that's shifted, and I wonder if it's shifted because we've exhausted people of negative, like BuzzFeed clicky shit that we're like, it doesn't. It's like when email marketing first came out, it crushed. Like whoever was first the email marketing game, like Joe Polish, I think is one of them. Bank, and then people are like I'm not gonna click that anymore. And I think social media, like course selling, all that kind of stuff, people are like, eh.
Yeah, that's true. There's just too much information out there. I'm happier as I simplify my life.
Same. Here's to simplification and liberation. At least I was allowed to say that word. It's in my goddamn book.
I'm fair. I wouldn't say, I did think, I'm like, liberated, that's stupid. I can't say that one.
And those are key parts of the book, but.
Where is it available to purchase?
Everywhere.
Barnes
Books
&
are
Noble,
sold, but
Amazon.
I do recommend bookshop.org because you get it from a local bookstore and it supports them.
Yes.
Also, the audiobook, Kylie and I recorded a conversation after each chapter. That's not planned. It's very conversational. And so that's for all you audiobook listeners, which I'm more of an audiobook person. And the book is, it's based on everything I've learned as an individual, everything Kai has, and everything we've learned together. It is potent. And if you read that book and you do it, it will change your life and your relationships. Like that's not a maybe. I know it because I've done it. And it's got all the necessary steps to step fully into your power and liberate yourself in a relationship and in turn your life.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Where are we going to dinner?
I don't know. We better call Pete. He knows.
Bye.
See you guys.